It is Friday, September 15th at 11:57 a.m. This is one of them late to the party transit updates. Normally we do these in the morning, but we're doing it right now. Gate 6, conflict, friction. This is in the solar plexus reaching towards the sacral. We have the fundamental design components of progress. The law that growth cannot exist without friction. This is the diaphragm that opens up to gate 59, which is sexuality. I like to view this as kind of like the feminine component of the channel of mating, whereas the 6 is like the yoni, the thing that softens and opens. 59 is the thing that is phallic and erect and then penetrates or tears down the walls. And so what we're looking at is the first line of gate 6, which is retreat, which is the realization that wasting one's resources against overwhelming odds is not courage but folly. The power of regeneration that can embrace retreat as a phase and not a failure. The emotional stability to accept conflict. In the detriment, we have the inferiority complex, whereas retreat is experienced as personal weakness. Emotional instability in times of conflict. So it's really a question of stability, or a highlighting of emotional stability, in that, you know, really you either have emotional stability or you don't have emotional stability, which doesn't mean that there's no emotion. It means the presence of emotion and the presence of stability or the presence of instability, right? Understanding that retreat is a phase and not a failure, right? As opposed to looking at retreat as a personal weakness, looking at emotions and instability as a personal weakness rather than just a phase. Like, I had some emotional waves this morning, and, you know, there were opportunities where I could have flown off the handlebars and been pissed for no reason absolutely at all, made some emotional decisions, said some things that I didn't really mean, but I chose to be emotionally stable, which I feel really good about now that I'm talking about it.
Hell yeah, bro.
I'm so good at riding these emotional waves.
Yeah, boy.
Which really just looks like a lot of patience for myself. A lot of patience for myself, a lot of patience for my partner as well. And realizing, like, she has her emotional waves at times, and, you know, when she's snappy or catty at me, you know, I just kind of like assume, oh, you're in an emotional wave. And so I can not take this personally, because if we have two people in the emotional wave and we're together, then what is that really going to do? Is that going to help anyone? I don't think so.
Definitely not. From experience, no.
No, probably suck-ass situation.
Suck-ass 100%.
Indefinite suck-ass situation.
Not good suck-ass.
All right, well, that's line 1. That's retreat. Should we eating it?
Yep. Pour this tea real quick.
He's pouring that tea real quick.
You know, because that's what we do here.
Because it's tea and transits. If it's not tea and transits, it's just
transits.
It's just transits, which is less exciting. I've done just transits before, and it's more better with tea and transits.
Yeah. Light this incense up again, and then line 1 eaching.
Perfect.
6 in the sun, yeah.
6 in the sun, yep.
Okay. Got sung conflict, the water below the heaven. We'll read the judgment and image too, since we're in the first day.
Yeah.
The judgment, conflict. You are sincere and are being obstructed. A cautious halt. How old is this pot?
Oh.
It's from last night?
Yeah, pour it.
Pour it.
Because it's dead. Pretty dead.
Super old.
Super old teapot. Yeah, let's make a new pot. Yeah, I'll do a new pot.
New pot. Okay. So the judgment, conflict. You are sincere and are being obstructed. A cautious halt halfway brings good fortune. Going through to the end brings misfortune. It furthers one to see the great man. It does not further one to cross the great water. Conflict develops when one feels himself to be in the right and runs into opposition. If one is not convinced of being in the right, opposition leads to craftiness or high-handed encroachment, but not to open conflict. If a man is entangled in a conflict, his only salvation lies in being so clear-headed and inwardly strong that he is always ready to come to terms by meeting the opponent halfway. To carry on, the conflict to the bitter end has evil effects even when one is in the right, because the enmity is then perpetuated. It is important to see the great man, that is, an impartial man, whose authority is great enough to terminate the conflict amicably or assure a just decision. In times of strife, crossing the great water is to be avoided, that is, dangerous enterprises are not to be begun, because in order to be successful, they require concerted unity of forces. Conflict within weakens the power to conquer danger without. So just like Marco was talking about, like, he felt some conflict this morning and decided to just take some time. Like, he texted me just to be transparent and was like, hey man, I just need a little space this morning. I was like, cool. That's as much as, needs to be said, because he's whatever he was feeling, he needed to go through. And that is having a clear-headed and inwardly strong body, so that he can come to terms with himself and with meeting the opponent, whatever the opponent was or is, halfway, rather than being like, I'm going to fight this head on. Accurate?
Accurate.
The image, heaven and water go their opposite ways, the image of conflict. Thus, in all his transactions, the superior man carefully considers the beginning. The image indicates that the two causes of conflict are latent in the opposing tendencies of the two trigrams. Once these opposing tendencies appear, conflict is inevitable. To avoid it, therefore, everything must be taken carefully into consideration in the very beginning. If rights and duties are exactly defined, or if in a group the spiritual trends of the individuals harmonize, the cause of conflict is removed in advance.
Removing the cause of the conflict in advance by acknowledging that the conflict is going to happen.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Which we talked about last night.
Yeah.
Over dinner, we're like, oh God, 6:36 is coming.
Right, yeah.
It's about to happen.
Exactly.
It's about to get real up in here.
Which is like, in a way, one thing about like the concept of removing a conflict before it happens is kind of like makes me think about like Baki and Kung Fu and everything, how it's like you win a battle by all the training that you put into it before the battle, as opposed to the actual battle itself. Which, again, it's like the test of your emotional stability is the conflict itself. And if you're emotionally stable, then the conflict is less detrimental. If you're not emotionally stable, well, then it's like more training, more shadow work, more inner work, more mirror work, more biomechanics. That's the message that I got. I did something to my back the other day. I got to do some biomechanics.
Low-key stoked. Biomechanics.
Yeah, baby. All right. So now that's 6.
Let me get the
conflict.
First line.
Oh yeah. Get the first line.
6 at the beginning means if one does not perpetuate the affair, there is a little gossip. In the end, good fortune comes. While a conflict is in the incipient stage. Interesting. Incipient. I haven't seen that word. It makes me think of like inception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the inceptive phase.
Yeah.
The beginning phase.
The best thing to do is to drop the issue, especially when the adversity is stronger. It is not advisable to risk pushing the conflict to a decision. It may come to a slight dispute, but in the end, all goes well. So yeah, first thing I saw this morning, I woke up and saw Marco's text, because I'm usually early and up before Marco, and I was like, oh, okay, he needs space. There are 2 ways I could have gone about it. Been like, well, what did I do? Is everything okay? Bro, like, did I do something wrong? Instead, I just went, great, I have space too. And put my phone down and laid in bed. Just enjoyed myself.
There's actually 3 ways you could have gone about it.
There's a third.
You could have been like, hey, bro, it's time to train. Let's train.
That's true.
We said we were going to train. Let's train. I'm not going to let you do this to yourself. And there was a part of me last night that thought about that I'm like, I would fucking hate if Luke does that to me, because then I'll have to be like, listen, fucker.
Would like me? I wouldn't.
Yeah, I knew you wouldn't, but I was like, there's a part of me that was like preparing for the conflict. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so funny that I was thinking about that.
That is funny. Great.
And I didn't think about it long, but it did come to my mind. And I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, okay, but what is actually going to happen? He's probably just going to be like, yeah, of course, bro.
Yeah.
That's I was like, oh, Great. And then I think I watched the moon transit, or I watched some planetary transit, like as I was looking at my phone, thinking about sending you a message. I was like, oh, just send him in the morning because maybe I will want to train in the morning. And then I woke up and I was like, oh no, I'm heavy emotional.
Yeah.
Gotta do this. So this is super relevant to the referendum happening in Australia right now.
Interesting.
I don't know anything about that,
Me
Trick Light.
either.
If you want to
share that.
share about that, yeah, that'd be
wonderful.
really interesting. Because this is something that is super interesting, is where we can look at what's happening with in world affairs. Because again, this is the transits. These are
It's happening
homogenizing
worldwide.
forces. These are things that the entirety of humanity is experiencing all at the same time. We're all experiencing conflict. We're all experiencing the darkening of the light and crisis.
Yeah.
And so it's this, they say, there's a saying that's like, millionaires don't use astrology, but billionaires do. And I definitely believe that. They're voting about an Indigenous voice to Parliament. We are very behind in Australia with recognizing our First Peoples. Oh, damn.
Interesting.
Okay.
So they're voting about adding an Indigenous voice to Parliament?
Seems like that, yeah.
Seems like it, yeah.
Which, hopefully, that'd be awesome.
I mean, technically, I guess we've had Indigenous voices in Parliament in the United States, but they're never really focused on.
No.
They get pushed under the rug and usually get some kind of like sideways shit slapped at them to be like, oh, they're terrible. Which is unfortunate.
Which also is like, again, we're approaching this like drop of infrastructure, large infrastructure. So it's not to say that that's not going to matter, but it's really going to be like, who are the Indigenous voices that are actually building communities? And that's really what's going to matter into the future, So yes, there's a big yes and no campaigns. It's been showing how much polarity is without the gray area. Yeah. So it's like, I feel like we're moving away from the white and black existence into a much more gray area of existence. And so much energy to me is getting wasted on like trying to convince the white people to think black and trying to convince the black people to think white, when it's really just like, hey, look, you're a unique shade of whatever fucking color you are. And you either have a relationship to the land or you don't. And that's where, the importance of Indigenous peoples is coming in, because they didn't have anything to distract them from their relationship with land. And so that's one thing. They just had it. Yeah, that was all there was. Like, some Indigenous cultures don't even have a word for love, because it's like, is there anything outside of that?
Main Indigenous creature story, the rainbow serpent.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Exactly. So in that black and white, in the letting go of the that like super polarizing effort, right, there is that opportunity to appreciate the individuality within all this. So yeah, this is an interesting one. Crisis and conflict, or I should say conflict first, that's the sun, and then crisis. So let's go to 36 now. So 36 is darkening of the light, crisis. The rule of cycles in which decline is a natural but not enduring stage. Line 1, resistance. The energy and determination to persevere in the face of opposition. The emotional power to handle crisis. Detriment is over-principled resistance that, rather than being selective in resistance and thus less at risk, will maintain normal patterns and incur opposition. A resistance to change that will always bring crisis. So this would be like a resistance to retreating, because maybe you're used to just charging forward and attacking things, which retreating was the first line of Gate 6. Mm-hmm. But anything on that? Seemed pretty clear. Yeah. You're either going to handle the crisis, or it's a resistance to change that brings the crisis. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. So the judgment of darkening the light. In adversity, it furthers one to be persevering. One must not unresistingly let himself be swept along by unfavorable circumstances, nor permit his steadfastness to be shaken. He can avoid this by maintaining his inner light while remaining outwardly yielding and tractable. With this attitude, he can overcome even the greatest adversities. In some situations, indeed, a man must hide his light in order to make his will prevail in spite of difficulties in his immediate environment. Perseverance must dwell inmost consciousness and should not be discernible from without. Only thus is a man able to maintain his will in the face of difficulties. So yeah, it's like knowing that the light is still within, or it's still there. It's going to rise again, because the image of this one, it's the light has sunk into the earth, the image of darkening the light. Thus does the superior man live with the great mass. He veils his light, yet still shine. So it's like putting on a cloak, but knowing inside, like, I still got the light within me. I know the sun's going to rise again tomorrow. There's still going to be energy and life force. It's just there's time to go inward, or to take away, or not be so outward with the energy, not sharing it so much, which I already feel like. Just going out in public this morning, I was like, I'm not really going to talk to anybody, but still smile. Like, I probably smiled more than I usually do. Like, just being at Mono this morning and getting groceries, I was just like, smile on my face. Anyone looked at me in the eyes,
kung
I just
fu,
smile.
bro.
Yeah, I know.
You did your morning kung fu.
That's
That's
my practice. Hey.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the time of darkness, it is essential to be cautious and reserved. One should not needlessly awaken overwhelming enmity by inconsiderate behavior. In such times, one ought not fall in with the practices of others, neither should one drag them censoriously into the light. In social intercourse, one should not try to be all-knowing. One should let many things pass without being duped. Now we can move to the first line. 9 at the beginning means darkening of the light during flight. He lowers his wings. The superior man does not eat for 3 days on his wanderings, but he has somewhere to go. The host has occasion to gossip about him. With grandiose resolve, a man endeavors to soar above all obstacles, but thus encounters a hostile fate. He retreats and evades the issue. The time is difficult. Without rest, he must hurry along, with no permanent abiding place. If he does not want to make compromises within himself, but insists on remaining true to his principles, he suffers deprivation. Nevertheless, he has a fixed goal to strive for, even though the people with whom he lives do not understand him and speak ill of him. Which is interesting.
How so?
Just the not eating for 3 days. Like, I feel like it's like, not, instead of like eating, it's like not taking in so much energy for 3 days. I mean, you could fast for 3 days during this, and that would maybe be something good to do, which I'm not doing because I just ate great today and drank a bunch of juice.
Not doing that.
But like not taking in so much energy from outside sources, like being very limited and inward, and doing practices to continue to build that inner light within ourselves, or the stability that we continue to carry out through life, right?
So it's the gate of inexperience. You start with nothing. Then 36. Yeah, that makes sense too, because I've read this and understood this as like a part of the emotional wave that kind of like seeks out novelty, and coming from a kind of like collective comparison of everybody else's sexual and emotional adequacy compared to mine, and yeah, like the recognition of the inexperience, desire to share an experience, right, to then become like how you say, oh, that was a deep one, huh?
Yeah, I added.
You could just lean out.
Okay.
It's like all the tea.
give it to the. I added. It's all good.
All right. Desire to share an experience. Yeah, I mean, that's that. I'll admit, I'm like in a funky vibe right now. Still in a funky vibe. So I'm still moving through my own emotional wave around not going to San Diego. Also, I have one of my buddies asked me to DJ for a party tomorrow, which I'm excited and nervous about. I always get so nervous when DJing, even though it like doesn't matter. But for whatever reason, I want it to be so good. And also for me, this 36 activates the 35 that I have in the throat. And so, there's a lot coming up for me. But it's really fun to experience and share with y'all and kind of like process together. So thanks guys for being here. We're gonna pop in tomorrow, And yeah, love you guys. Peace.
Bye.
Also, they were doing an AMA on me and Prana, so it's in the event. It's in the event channel, and probably Luke will be here too.
Be around.
So-
Why not?
So we'll see you guys there.
Bye.
Peace.